The Cincinnati Bengals' narrow path to the playoffs remains much the same after a weekend where they didn't really get much help. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We are Locked On Bengals on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Welcome back to the Everydayers. Welcome back to those of you who make us your first listen. And if you're new to the show, interested in the playoff scenarios or whether we're buying any of this three-game bounce we've seen from the defense since we started talking about the possibility we would see that bounce late in the season, well, this is an episode we will cover those topics. So you can hit that subscribe button on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts and you won't miss an episode. Today, we're brought to you by PrizePicks, where you can get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. Check it out at the PrizePicks app or prizepicks.com/lockedonnfl. And James, as we've done after the weekend, the last few weeks, we've been updating, well, a couple of things. Less interested, I think, in draft position this week. But for those of you that are interested, if the season were to end today, the Bengals would be picking 14th in the NFL draft after their three-game win streak. But the path to the playoffs still exists and still looks largely the same in terms of the things they need to happen as it did before the weekend, which, as I said, James, means they didn't really get any help in a significant way over the week 16 games.
Yeah, outside of the big Denver game, of course, which was huge, which is why everything got as exciting as it did this past weekend. But yeah, they didn't get any help, and that's okay. But they need one of these cellar dwellers, these New York teams, to stand up. They need their fellow division rivals, the Cleveland Browns and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, to have the game of his life this week. They need the Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson to dial it back to 2012 and go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in a few days. They need those things to happen. We'll see if they do. But yeah, it's a tough spot. I was hoping for, I didn't actually think the Fighting Brian Callahans were going to beat the Indianapolis Colts. And if they had showed up in the first half, maybe they would have. But I did think the 49ers were going to beat the Dolphins. And so Kyle Shanahan, and more importantly, Brock Purdy and Deebo Samuel and the rest of the 49ers, you let me down. I thought that was the game where it would be like, all right, well, at least the Dolphins, you have the edge over them. And then you're hoping for the Colts to stub their toe down the stretch. But it didn't happen. The Bengals still need the Colts to lose one of their final two games. They need the Dolphins to lose one of their final two games. They have to win out. And then they really, really need, if all of those things happen, the Broncos to lose to the Chiefs in week 18.
And that's why you're talking about the Steelers beating the Chiefs, because then the Chiefs would have something clearly to play for, with Buffalo expected to win another game this week and then threatening the Chiefs for the 1 seed, where if Buffalo were to win out and the Chiefs were to drop a game or two, would have to drop 2 games, I guess, then Buffalo would have the tiebreaker there. So the Chiefs, with their deal with the devil and all of their crazy wins this year with only 1 loss, that loss to Buffalo, the Bengals need the Steelers, of all teams, to force the Chiefs into playing their starters so they have a better chance of beating the Broncos, motivated to keep the 1 seed. So that's one factor. That assumes the Bengals can beat the Broncos this week, which is its own conversation. Big topic. We'll obviously talk about that a lot this week. We'll only have 4 episodes this week with the holiday and everything. So we'll still have you covered with the game preview. We'll still have the crossover, but one fewer episode this week, just as a programming note. But in addition to that, you need the Colts to drop a game to the Giants or Jaguars. That might be the most difficult part of what the Bengals need in terms of help from other teams. The Giants and Jaguars are terrible, but maybe Brian Thomas, maybe Mac Jones can do something with the Jaguars. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Brian Thomas is awesome. So there's one really good player between those teams, and Malik Neighbors is awesome too. So maybe one of those guys can put a team on their back, and the Colts will make enough mistakes. And then you need the Dolphins to drop one to Cleveland or the Jets. I mean, this is what we're talking about. And it goes back to, the early season losses for the Bengals, but the help the Bengals need is significant, and they need to take care of their own business, which is going to involve beating a couple of teams that are pretty dang competent. The Denver Broncos are a real NFL team that has done real things in the trenches, one of the best offensive lines in pass blocking in football, one of the most well-rounded defenses in football, and that's where it starts before they have to deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers again.
Yep. It's going to be tough. And that's why if you're the Bengals, you can only focus on that part of it. You can't send Jake Browning to Cleveland for this week so he can play and start at quarterback, even though that would be such an upgrade from Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And it would be a fun storyline if the NFL did that, right? You can't do that. Jameis Winston, if he were starting for the Browns this week, I think that they would beat the Dolphins by like 10. I do. I think the Dolphins stink in cold weather, but you know who else stinks in any weather? Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And so it's really tough for me to get behind DTR. Maybe it happens, but the Browns don't want to win. And that's what's tough is the Browns don't want to win. The Giants have the number 1 pick as of today. They don't want to win. And so if Brian Daboll, the head coach, has assurances that he's back next year, it's like, hey, calm down. We're going to get the number 1 pick. What's he fighting for? What are they fighting for as a team? They're going to go get a quarterback from Malik Neighbors. And so they want to lose. So that's what's tough about this for me now is it's like the development of, a week ago, it was like, oh, well, if Jameis Winston's quarterback, that week 17 game against Miami in Cleveland, that's an interesting game. Now it doesn't feel as interesting. The Giants get just a huge break, getting the 1 seed or the number 1 overall pick, talking about seeding, because the Raiders lose and drop or win and drop all the way down in the draft position. It's like, oh man, that's the bad break too that the Bengals got in week 16 is all of those things around all the little tentacles that you don't really think of. If you're the Giants in your Giants ownership, let's say you have a halftime lead, you're almost radioing down like, hey, we better not win this game. I know I would be at this point.
Yeah. I don't know how much that happens that overtly, but there's there's tanking aspirations.
Oh, I'd throw, I would throw cups with written notes on it. I mean, it would be, if there's no way. I mean, in the Texans, the one example is Lovie Smith and the Texans a couple of years ago. They ended up getting CJ Stroud anyway, but they won their final game. Lovie Smith gets fired and he wins the final game. And there's no way I would have allowed that to happen, especially if you're firing Lovie Smith and it cost them the number 1 pick.
Yeah. The one piece of information the Bengals will have before their game is the outcome of that Chiefs-Steelers game. That is happening on Wednesday. So in the middle of the week, on Christmas, we will have that information. We'll know what's happened in that game. And that is the only thing the Bengals will know in terms of the help they need when they play their game on Saturday at 4:30. At 4:30.
1:30 your time.
1:30 my time. I'm looking at these times in Pacific time. The Colts don't play their game until Sunday. That's a Sunday early window game. The Dolphins play in the afternoon window against the Browns. And so the rest of the information the Bengals are looking for, they will not have before their game against Denver on Saturday, which guarantees, of course, that game will be very meaningful for both teams, as Denver needs to get a win somewhere, right? And they're looking for that tiebreaker over the Bengals as well. And the Bengals are looking to keep, of course, their season alive. One way the Bengals will contribute to keeping their season alive is if the defense can continue to play the way it's played the last 3 weeks against a couple of offenses that look significantly better than those offenses they've played in the last 3 weeks. We'll discuss some of the standout performances on defense and how much we're buying the bounce on defense coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and you got to get in on the action right now. Maybe you think the Bengals are going to handle business and win their 4th straight. Well, they're 3-point home favorites against the Denver Broncos. So Vegas clearly respecting what Joe Burrow and company have done. Maybe you think it's going to be the other way, and that pass rush for the Denver Broncos is going to get after Joe Burrow. We're going to talk about the offensive line coming up, a banged-up offensive line for the Bengals. Maybe you're worried about that, and you want to go the other way. Regardless, get in on the action with FanDuel, where right now you will get get this, $250 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. Your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com, boom, you win that, and you can bet it on the college football playoff, the Bengals. You can bet it on Monday Night Football. You can bet it on the NBA, anything and everything you can think of. FanDuel has it. And when you win that first $5 bet at FanDuel.com, you'll get $250 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. FanDuel.com.
James, when we have talked about this defense in the last few weeks, it has been an interesting roller coaster, I guess. I mean, a few weeks ago, everyone is ready to fire Lou Anarumo in the middle of the season. They've just lost their third straight game, and they're getting just absolutely torched on defense in the process, giving up 35 points, 34 points, 44 points, 44 points to Russell Wilson at home in one of their only home games in that stretch when they played 4 out of 5 games on the road. And then they had the schedule of Dallas, Tennessee, Cleveland, teams playing backup or backup level quarterbacks, teams who had some of the worst offenses in the NFL in the case of Tennessee and Cleveland. Dallas has actually still been roughly average over the last few weeks, over the last 5 weeks or so. I looked at that one before we started recording. Dallas, if you're looking for some sort of sign that this defense is capable against more than just the true dregs of the NFL, the Tennessees, the Las Vegases, the Cleveland Browns, etc., the Dallas game would be the one you would point to, or you'd have to go all the way back to the Kansas City defensive performance in week 2. But there were some players, and there have been some players the last few weeks that have stepped up and have started to make more consistent impacts, some young guys that are making contributions. And so as we try to parse all of this, where we cautioned about this bounce against bad teams late in the season and said that this could be coming, we've seen it happen now. The question is, having lived through that and experienced that, not it just being a theoretical thing that we talked about potentially happening, how much are we buying? What are we buying out of these last 3 games?
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. I will say on Sunday night when I was watching the Cowboys beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I was like, what in the world is this? I was shocked at that result. I really did. I thought Tampa was going to handle business there. So, yeah, the Dallas one looks better, I would say. But the Titans stink, right? There's a reason we weren't confident in them going into that Colts game. There's a reason why I made the Cleveland references going into this week and the Bengals banking on the team they just beat again. And so we'll see if they shock us, but the competition part of it certainly matters. But I do think that early season Bengals defense fails to force, create, do what the Bengals have done in recent weeks. Maybe it doesn't continue. Maybe Sean Payton and Bo Nix come in here and put on a clinic. Maybe they just can't tackle Audric Estime, who had a touchdown last week. Or maybe there's just no way they're going to be able to keep up with Cortland Sutton. But the guys I'm seeing, like they held Jerry Jeudy in check yesterday. Maybe that's all because of Dorian Thompson-Robinson, right? Maybe. Or maybe it's because Cam Taylor-Britt is getting back to the guy that we thought he was. And that the start of the season was a bit weird. Like I'm not, so it really depends on the guy. Like I'm not selling all of the Cam Taylor-Britt future stock because I never thought he was going to be an all-pro anyway. So I think I was a little lower on him than some, or even a pro bowler, a little lower on him than some. But I certainly didn't expect what I saw earlier this year where he was getting beat like a drum. And so it seems like he's coming back a bit. We'll see if that continues, and we need to see it this week. And I do think if the Bengals win the final 2 games, we're going to look at this defense and say, all right, well, this piece, those are building blocks, or those are guys that can contribute moving forward. Those are guys that you're confident in. And there are guys that have flashed. Cam, I wouldn't say has necessarily flashed. I think we know kind of what he is. overall now because we have such a larger picture. But like the Chris Jenkinses, the McKinley Jacksons, guys like that, I think this week is huge. Not that it's not huge for Cam, but it's big in a different way. The guy I'm curious about, because I was pretty critical a few weeks ago of Geno Stone, and I feel like he's answered the bell in a big way. It feels better. It looks better. He's obviously had an interception in 3 straight games, including a pick 6 against the Titans. Where are you on Geno Stone? Or are you still pretty skeptical of him?
I think that after the first 5 or so games of the year, there were still tackling issues, but the coverage stuff was at least steadier, was more consistent with Geno Stone. They found at some point better ways to use him, and his interception this week, while it was a tip ball from DJ Ivey, which is a great play from DJ Ivey, he gets himself in position on that play, covers a lot of ground as a post safety, starts on the right hash, and ends up working all the way back over the left side of the field to be in position to collect that tip pass. So, I mean, it is still a good play from Geno Stone. I think that Stone is not the most significant of the Bengals' problems on defense right now.
Sure.
As of today, and could be a fine piece if they improve other things around him on the defense. And at the number that he commands next year, they could choose to move on and overhaul that room again if that's something they're interested in doing. They're not financially restricted from doing so, but it's also not like Geno Stone's making a ton of money next year either. And so where his early season performances from a tackling and coverage perspective had us wondering, what's the point of this? This has really not worked. It is very different at this point than what it feels like around Sheldon Rankins. And it's not really fair to Sheldon Rankins because he's been unable to get on the field and hasn't been able to be part of this late season defensive bounce against some of these bad teams. Maybe he would be putting up good performances as well, right?
Sure.
But he hasn't been on the field to do that. And so where Sheldon Rankins has not had the redemption story and the opportunity to make those plays, and all we can think about with Rankins is the relatively consistent lack of a pass rush from him, where he's certainly better than what they had when they were playing Zach Carter and Lawrence Guy early in the year, and they were signing guys off the street. The impact for the money they're spending on Sheldon Rankins isn't there. And so that's kind of where I would say I am on Geno Stone. And then Cam Taylor-Britt playing much steadier the last few weeks. If he can carry that through the last few weeks of the season, you're feeling much better about him going into the future. And then there's questions about the other corners and their health going in to the future years. But besides that, then it's like, okay, what about these young defensive linemen? The defensive tackles, the rookie defensive tackles combining for 3 sacks in that game. And Myles Murphy, I think, showing some growth again late in the season, sort of like last year where some of the pass rush development is happening. We're seeing him winning a little bit more, even though it's not necessarily leading to sacks. I think there's still some visible growth there. And then obviously Jordan Battle, massive game against Cleveland, playing the run really, really well. One mistake in that game overall, but overall had a great game. If these young guys can continue that performance in these last couple of games, then you're feeling like you have some pieces you can add to, supplement, and build around a little bit. You don't have to fill every single position on this defense going forward.
Yeah, I think the answer is in the middle, to be quite honest. They aren't going to be a defense that forces, 12 turnovers this month, like 9 turnovers in the past 2 games.
And it's their saving grace too.
No doubt. By the way, I think they can remain opportunistic. That was what was so mind-numbing about the beginning of the year. It's like, you guys are fine. You can't stop a nosebleed. Can you touch a pass? Can you get a tip ball? Can you get close to one play that matters? And so they're being that now and being that opportunistic defense that forces turnovers. And I have a thought about Sheldon Rankins, and it's interesting. And it has nothing to do with the long-term view. Everybody knows what's going to happen in a month or so when it comes to his contract. But I have a thought about him, and I also have a thought about another key, big, high-priced dollar free agent addition from a few years ago that happens to be out as well. So we can get into that and probably finish off some thoughts on the defense as well coming up next.
This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by PrizePicks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, PrizePicks is ready to make your holidays bigger and brighter because you can win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. And this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when those picks hit, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. You can take a look at the Joe Burrow passing yards projection and choose whether he's going to have more or less in this critical game against the Denver Broncos. Or maybe you're interested in Chase Brown or Jamar Chase. Well, it's all there, and it's quick and simple to challenge yourself, challenge your friends. All you have to do is download the PrizePicks app. You can use code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. $50 instantly when you play just $5 at PrizePicks. Run your game.
Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It's the perfect resource going into the new year, going into 2025. You want to create new habits. Rocket Money is going to help you do that. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, even the goals you want to hit in 2025. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, has saved over $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach all of your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon.
James, you have a Sheldon Rankins take. Let's hear it.
Yeah. What's the one thing, even with McKinley and Chris Jenkins and these guys flashing a bit, they could use a little more interior pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
What if he came back this week and was good and contributed and helped them win? And then next week against the Steelers, did the same thing. I don't know that that's going to happen, by the way. He did not tell me that he's feeling better and ready to go. I do know he's dealing with a serious illness. A lot of people question that. I don't question that at all. I know he got out on the field a little bit last week, and I don't mean like participating in practice, but was like out and about. Maybe, like if there was ever a time for him to come back, wouldn't it be Saturday if he's able to? So, and then is it realistic that he can do it? I don't know. I'm not saying that it's realistic. I don't know everything about the illness he's been dealing with, but man, what a time it would be if Sheldon Rankins were able to contribute in some way.
That'd be awesome. At the same time, I can't help but feel that what if is like, what if it started raining $100 bills in my living room? You know?
Well, then I'd be flying to Canada and stealing some money from Jake.
It would be awesome.
That's what I'd be doing.
It's great. It's pretty
Let
unlikely.
me get a hundo. Let me get a couple.
That would be good news for the Bengals if Sheldon Rankins could come back and make an impact. It just hasn't been there this year for him.
What are the odds that happens on Saturday or the Bengals make the playoffs? What's the better?
I think the Bengals making the playoffs is better odds. Yeah, because the odds that Sheldon can like even play are probably roughly the odds that the Bengals can make the playoffs or will make the playoffs.
It's probably pretty low, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I do think he's getting better, which that's great. Is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Wish him the best. It's not like a Sheldon Rankins bad person thing or anything. He just hasn't produced the pass rushing kind of impact that the Bengals were hoping for when they signed him. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. No doubt. And they could really use that right now.
They could.
No doubt.
And against, like I said, one of the better pass blocking offensive lines in the NFL in Denver right now. That's been a very solid trench unit for the Broncos.
They can't block Mike Hilton. Don't do that.
No, that's the thing, is nobody can block Mike Hilton because of the timing. That's his whole game.
Mike Hilton, man. That dude.
I don't know if there's anything else on the defense. I think that the interesting things to watch on this defense for the rest of the year continue to be the young players, the guys that we've talked about, the Jordan Battles, who seems to be settling in a little bit, the Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson, Miles Murphys. And I think there's some curiosity, at least for me, around Joseph Osai down the stretch, the way that there could potentially be some curiosity around some of these other players. Osai continues to play a little bit more, or maybe a lot more, than Miles Murphy, and continues to make those kind of hustle plays. And I wonder what kind of market there will be for Osai. I wonder if there is mutual interest in a return to Cincinnati, if there's like a potential there for a future for him. And so he does still remain a little bit intriguing to me, does Joseph Osai.
Sure. Yeah. I think he's trying to make himself a lot of money right now. And that would be like, if I'm Sheldon Rankins coming back now and trying to salvage this a little bit, because there's no stock left. And by the way, I don't think it's his choice. Like, he's been sick, he's been ill. So there's a reason behind it. But it would be nice for him to come back. You know who else it would be nice if they had this week, as we switch to the offense real quick?
Yeah.
Orlando Brown Jr. I wouldn't rule him out. I think he's got a shot against the Broncos. Probably should have said that 20 minutes ago, but think he has a shot to play this week. Not saying he will. And I don't think he will be 100%. But I think that you're talking about one of the toughest NFL players, talking about someone that got on the field last week a little bit and is trending in the right direction. And the reason he's not on IR is for this very scenario. Hey, we're 4-8. If we get back into it, we'll keep you around. And he knew it. And that was kind of the play. And so now you have him available potentially. You have him. He's available to play if he's healthy enough to go. He's not on IR and unavailable. So we'll see if Orlando can go, but it would be huge. So just something I'm monitoring ahead of injury reports coming out in practice and all of those things on a short week.
Yeah, it is technically possible, because he is not on injured reserve after that week 13 game, that Orlando Brown can play this week legally. Is what you mean. If he does go.
Not available. I don't know if he'll be available, to be clear. But he's allowed to play.
If he does go, hopefully he's significantly better than he was the last time he tried to go out there. He took a few weeks off, obviously, between the injury in week 8 and trying to return in week 13 against Pittsburgh. It wasn't great. He clearly was still dealing with that injury in a very significant way. So if he tries to go back out
in week 9 too,
not according to the snap counts that I'm looking at. No snaps in week 9.
Oh, well, there's the buy in there then. There's something.
There was a buy in there. Yep.
Okay.
But we haven't seen him for a while. If he does play again this season, then all I'm saying is hopefully that injury is better, because it wasn't great the last time he was out there. But if he is better and can be something close to himself, 80% of himself, 85% of himself, that's better than what they have at left tackle right now. And this is against the Broncos team with a well-rounded pass rush this week. And obviously against the Steelers, we know they've got a couple of good edge rushers there in week 18, depending on what's going on by then. And so between him and Amarius Mims, having those guys at tackle versus the alternative, a couple of backups, a couple of fringe players, and it wasn't great for the tackles against the Browns. Neither of them had a very nice time. That would be a significant upgrade for a Bengals offensive line that could use a significant upgrade right about now, that has had injuries pile up at the tackle position at this point. And that would be a shot in the arm down the stretch for an offense that has still been producing, has still been moving the ball, has still been doing good things. But again, the challenge in these last 2 weeks is more significant, I think, than they've seen in the last 3.
Yeah. And Orlando is, like I said, I don't think he'll be 100%. So the question will be what percentage is he? Is he 80, like you said? If so, I think that's your best option. If he's 50, well, then I don't think they'll ask him to play. And I don't think he will play. So that one's tough. The Amarius one on a short week is rough. You certainly hope that he can get the treatment and all of those things. He's young and can get out there and play a full allotment of snaps. I was thinking you were the week 8 game against Philly. I was thinking that was week 9 because he left the week 7 game against the Browns and then played the following week against the
Yeah.
Eagles. I'm talking about Orlando Brown Jr. here, and then missed 3 games, came back for the Steelers, and then has missed the past 3 games as well.
Yeah. Yeah, getting those guys back, playing healthy would obviously be awesome. I don't think either guy would be 100%. And I think here we're feeling a little bit that flex of the Broncos Chargers into that Thursday night game and the Bengals out of it to Sunday. We're feeling it on both sides. On the one hand, the advantage that the Bengals got was that Denver had to play a road Thursday night game that they were unlikely to win. They didn't win it, but that rest advantage flipped. And now we're on the other side of that where the Bengals now have a short week, the Broncos coming off a mini bye. And so that, in addition to the Steelers having a mini bye for week 18, is a quirk of the schedule that certainly is not something that has gone in the Bengals' favor. Something that we talked about back when the schedule came out, the rest disparities, and they've only gotten worse, I think, because of flexes late in the season here that have affected the Bengals' schedule.
Yeah, they might have. I would say avoiding Cleveland though on a short week did help Joe. Like Joe's knee.
Oh yeah,
is kind of that's.
I was just talking strictly about like the rest disparity numbers are skewed against the Bengals with the flexes late in the season, and Pittsburgh playing the Christmas game this week, which is crazy. They're playing a game. In 2 days from when we're recording this?
Yeah, Wednesday. Gotta pay attention to that game.
Yeah.
Can you give me a go Steelers, Jake?
Nope.
I will.
Cannot.
Right? I mean, I want to.
I can think it on Wednesday during the game, but I cannot say it today on Monday. Like that, those 2 words in sequence, can't do it.
That's fair. I get that. I'm not going to push you on that one.
Thank you. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. The next episode you will hear from us will be the crossover. We'll have a game preview for you later in the week as well. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.